I have nearly 600 game time hours in FM26, and here are 10 things I wish I knew sooner into my playtime. So whether you're finally picking up FM26 throughout the holidays, or of course you've just got more time to play it, here are those 10 things, and I wanted to share because it might help you out too. Now, starting things off with a quick one that I kind of knew from FM24 anyway, but I think a lot of new players might not know this. But if you're looking at setting up the game from the very beginning, you're adding all the leagues because you want to be a little bit more immersive, you want to see what's going on in these divisions, but you're worried about your estimated game speed. As you can see here, mine says relaxed, it's not the best. Well, if I only want to manage in England, France and Italy, I can just go and select view only in this little drop down menu here on the other leagues that I would like to keep up with, and eventually you can see it will increase your estimated game speed. We are now at balanced. Now, this second one I discovered throughout my Ajax free transfers only video that I did, and it's down to your recruitment. So if you go onto recruitment and player database, as you know, I was looking for free transfers. So when I got to January and I was looking for the players with contracts expiring within 6 months, there wasn't a lot of options. There was a few of them that I could approach. And then I decided to just have a look to see what other players would be there, because over here, this is only technically showing me players that would be doubtful in being interested. What about just not considered? Just nobody who would be considered. Oh, look, Adam Wharton's there. And I actually managed to get a bid in, and he joined the club through this. And I did not realize, because beforehand, I would never even look at the players who would not be considered interested in joining the club. But again, this is all down to just the opinion of the assistant manager. So although a lot of the time you might not be able to get half the players on this list, for instance, William Pacho, I don't know whether he would want to sign. No, he wouldn't. But for the likes of Adam Wharton, you can find players that on this list would not be considered interested in joining your club. In fact, accept a contract and joined my club. The next thing I wish I knew sooner is on the recruitment tab. Now, there's a few tiles on here which I think is very handy. I'm going to cover a few of them. One of them being the contracts here, so you can see already just by looking at this, there's 15 players that are about to go out of contract. We're at the end of the season. There's 33 players that have a year or 2 years left on their contract too, so I might need to renew them. And it gives you a list of a few of those players too for you to go into. My favorite thing on this is actually something my dad discovered, and it's on the squad planner here, because there's 4 position issues. So before I've even looked at signing a player, I always now come to here and see what my assistant suggests that we are struggling with in terms of squad depth. So we appear to be lacking in depth in terms of the goalkeeper. The players we have in the position have poor ability at left back. At left mid, we appear to be lacking in depth, same as right midfield too. So I like that it gives you a varied explanation of the problems that you get in your squad for the different positions and roles. It's not just there's something to do with the goalkeepers. It's giving you the option or the idea of what's actually wrong with it. Lack of squad depth. However, at left back, you've got squad depth, they're just not very good. So that obviously is a really good little thing for you to have a look at, and you can go into a little bit more depth down here by selecting these positions. However, there's other stuff here that I think is really handy. The transfers out and in, we're going to cover that more as well. So although I knew about the transfers in and out before I started using it, I just never really thought it would be that good. However, upon using it, I've discovered that it's probably better using this than it is actually the way I was recruiting to begin with by the recruitment focuses. I actually like selling players through this method. So if you go have a look on transfers out, and you can go down, you see Hull here has got a centre back. Well, they're looking for a centre back as a squad player. Just from selecting that, I've got 8 players here that I could potentially try and sell to Hull and offer them to them for a certain amount of money or an unspecified, so they can make the decision to bid, etc. And I think it's a really good way, and I've actually been able to sell quite a few players through this method. However, it's the recruitment in that's really surprised me on how good it actually is. So at Sheffield Wednesday here, I just set up 3 requirements of strikers, and one of them was regular starter, important player, star player, and that's the only thing I selected. Literally just striker down and selected one of these 3, and I do all 3 of them when I'm looking for a first team player, because it's not down to like your assistant's opinion, it's down to the players who see the advert. This is basically you putting out an advert and saying, hey, Sheffield Wednesday are looking for a striker as a regular starter. And we've had 6 players who've responded to that, 5 players who think that they are important player worthy in my squad, and 5 players who think they would be star players within my squad. So that's quite an interesting one. So if I click on that, it's giving me the option to look at the 5 players directly who believe that they would be a star player for my Sheffield Wednesday team. And I've never seen any of these. I've never scouted any of them until they decided to come to me and obviously mention that they would be interested. You can see this guy is actually, according to my scouts, a 4-star player. He cost me £3.1 million. I'm in the championship, so obviously the standard's not that high. He is a very good player in terms of how good my squad is. But if we're looking at the regular starters, we've got Diego Percan, who cost me 600k. Is there a lot of difference there? In terms of value, potentially, if we haven't got the £3 million, he's still rated as a 4-star player. So I think it's worth doing all 3 of the regular star, important player, and star player to see what positions and responses that you get, of course, for every different position that you want. And you can just directly click this little link here and it will send you to those players. It does take a little bit of time to obviously see and work out who is actually a better player or a better option to go for. But to be honest, I really like this little addition to Football Manager, and I've started using it a lot more in the last couple of weeks. The 5th thing I wish I knew sooner is on the tactic page. So if we're looking at this and say this is my best 11 pick, and I'm looking at that and going, well, actually, I think although Barry Bannon is retiring, I want him to play as many games as possible, make the use out of him while I still can. But as we're going through the games, obviously we've got some injuries in here and players that won't be able to play in the next fixture, and we're going to have to change the squad. So obviously the last squad, it looks like this, but I can't remember now what the best 11 pick would be like, or the pick that I want it to be like. If you go down to the drop menu there from Quick Pick and you go on Manage Team Lineup, you can save team selection to what you want it to be. I've already done this, so you can see here on the Manage Team Lineup, use selection best with Barry. This is my best 11 pick, but with Barry Bannon in there. So that is obviously you can select and have a cup team. You can have a league fixture lineup. You can have a Champions League lineup, your best lineup. You can have that all in that save team selection on your Manage Team Lineup, so that you can always go through and go, right, we're in a cup fixture. I don't want to go through and fully rotate the teams. There's a few players that I want to give game times to. Maybe it's sort of like you got a youngster in your team. You think every time we are playing against a team that we should be beating quite comfortably, I want to play with that player on the pitch. Put it in a team selection so you won't have to keep faffing around and make sure moving everybody around in those positions, and you've got it there quite easy to go to in just a little drop down menu. Another thing I wish I knew sooner is on the same page, and we're going through fixtures now, of course, and we've got upcoming Sheffield United. It's our rivals coming up, and if we look at this, we've got the advice tab down here. We've got tactics evaluation, so you can have a look at the tactics evaluation, and there's a few things on here. So there's no advice right now, but if there was, it would be in that selection. But there's other stuff that you can have there. The tactics starting 11, so it goes down and it asks to use suggested squad, so it would switch around on what the assistant manager would suggest would be the best option for the upcoming game against Sheffield United. On here as well, if you have a look, there's an upcoming match selection, and this is obviously Pete Shuttleworth, my assistant manager, giving us more recommendations. So the mentality would be suitable ahead of our next match, so we can obviously apply that for that. Team instructions to add. These are the instructions that my assistant manager thinks would be better just specifically against Sheffield United. Sheffield United statistically are poor from set pieces, so obviously adding set pieces into our game would be great. Aim to frustrate them, concede most chances there in these 5 additional things to add into our tactical instructions. It obviously gives us more because there's opposition instructions too. There's things such as never press. This Harrison Burrows guy, maybe he's really good, but we wanted to go hard on attack, and you can apply all of the advice in there should you wish. But of course, sometimes you don't want to make too many changes if you've got a winning tactic. Now, maybe you got through the season and you think you've built a good tactic, you just can't understand why it's just not working. But there's a few things on this tactical page which I wish I knew sooner that could help me, because of course the new tactical engine, the in and out of possession that we've got on FM26, can be very tricky when you first starting getting used to playing it. Now, there's a couple of buttons here. There's this one here, which is very good at tells you, and it's good because it's individually as well, which I kind of like. where players will be on the pitch. So you can kind of get a gist of where the players will be, and if they are, the greener they are, very much like player roles, they are more prominent in those positions. If they're red, it's kind of not going to be there, for instance. But on the out of possession, it's again very similar where you're going to see these types of players. So I think this is a really good sort of like little button for us on there. It's annoying to press because you have to press it underneath, but it's very good, I think, to see where those players and positions are. However, sometimes as well, using this, if you click on team instructions and you have a look, you can select a phase now to see where your players are going to be. And this is what my dad was, when my dad was really struggling with tactics, this is kind of the explanation that I was sort of showcasing to him, because every time he'd come at me with, why is my tactic not working? So the first thing I'd go to is this page. I'd be like, well, if you look at it, when you've got the ball, for instance, he'd have too many players over here and there'd be big gaps there, or they're all bunched in the middle, because if you make changes to this, for instance, we've got fullbacks here. If I tell them I want an inside wing back, and on this side I want a playmaking wing back, but I also want 2 advanced centre backs, so these 2 will be pushing forward as well. And actually I want to drop somebody down in there because, I want to be safe. Then if you look at the team instructions when you've got the ball here, look how many players are just bunched into this position here. And you think, well, no wonder why we keep losing. Whenever we've got the ball, everybody just piles into the centre of the pitch. And the flanks, we keep getting done. It's just not good. So you need to look at this every time you make some tactical tweaks, because even the most subtle changes can really be detrimental to your tactic if you're making those bad changes. Because, of course, they might tell a player to go into a certain position on the pitch and then it be too crowded, or it leaves a huge whopping gap opened up on the other side of the pitch. Now, something else that I wish I knew sooner is on this tactical page. Sometimes whenever you do a quick pick, for instance, for the next fixture, you think, well, I don't want that player there, or I'd rather have Morgan Whittaker up front. But when you change that, that doesn't change where he sits in the out of possession one. So obviously you might end up go, I'll change them there, and then oh no. And everybody is playing in random different positions, and you're kind of stuck, and you're having to switch things around, and it's just a little bit annoying. There's a way around it that I wish I knew sooner, because if you go to combined, whenever you make a change there, it does it for both. So for instance, now Whittaker and Karamatari have changed in both of these and not just in one. However, if you're only on both and you only make the change on one selected, it's only going to make it in that selection. And I was finding this to be a bit of a problem whenever I was trying to make tactical tweaks, and I noticed my dad was doing exactly the same thing, because you get these little orange spots come up here to say a player is too far away from that position. So, you make the changes and you think they're still too far away. When you go to combined, this is the best place to obviously make the changes in terms of moving players around the pitch to where they're obviously better suited onto your team, or bringing players on doesn't necessarily affect it at all, so you don't have to worry about it on that. But yeah, use the combined if you're wanting to move players in position, and then use the both to evaluate before making any of those changes again. Now, there's something that I wish I knew sooner, because I think this one's just quite a funny one, but if you go to club and go to performance feedback, it gives you quite a good overview of loads of different things, including your recruitment, your matches, your tactics, and your squad, your players, etc. But you can also see what the supporters think, not just the board. So right now, this is giving you an overview of what the supporters think of your current squad. And it's quite funny, to be honest, because this is obviously their reactions to how well your players are playing. They're ecstatic at how good Morgan Whittaker is. They're just very pleased about some players. But if you're looking at the other side of it, they're concerned about Ingelsson, who hasn't been doing very well recently. But if you look at the board, you don't get that sort of indication. But the supporters sort of overview and evaluation might give you an idea of something that you've missed, something that you think, I've been playing this player for quite a lot and I haven't realised that actually he hasn't been as good as what I thought he would be. My supporters are only satisfied with Ike Ugbu as a winger, despite his average rating being a 7.13. So I might be playing Ugbu quite a lot, and my supporters are like, it's all right. There might be a better player suited on the bench that I can essentially use instead of Ugbo that my supporters actually prefer and are pleased with on my team that's just sat on my bench. Now, the final thing on FM26 that I wish I knew sooner is something I did pick up quite early on, but I imagine a lot of people have missed it as well. Now, when you're selling a player, you get something like this. Now, I'm trying to sell this Gerard Barnacle Best, a youngster in my team, for £7 million. You think, oh, brilliant, £7 million into my transfer budget, until you realize that a lot of it's down to installments, and you'll actually only get £3.7 million added to your transfer budget upon the completion of the deal. But you need that money right now, and let's face it, when do you ever see the monthly installments go into your bank balance in the transfer budget? It just never happens. However, still now you can press accept, because once you go further forward, there is an option to get that money back up front, instead of having to just wait to see whether it ever happens in your transfer budget, which I'll be honest, I've never seen it. Go back to that sign-in where it says Manchester United have signed that player. And as you can see down the bottom, an action message of mortgage installments, because if you press that, here we go, an extra £2.6 million from that transfer fee is going directly into your transfer budget. So you actually get a lot of that money that they were originally going to give it in installments up front. You've mortgaged it, so you get you're paying a bit of interest. I don't know exactly how much it is, but you're still getting way more money in your transfer budget than what you would if you never pressed that button. And let's face it, it was only going to go to the club anyway, and it's better off in your hands instead of the boards. So there we have it. Those were 10 things that I wish I knew earlier when I was playing FM26. What are some things that you wish you knew earlier? And of course, if this was helpful for you, please press subscribe and make sure you check out this video on screen, because I've just done a challenge where I try to win the Champions League only using defenders.